Shinty, to us growing up, to me anyway, was it's like around these parts it's like a religion. You know, when you grow up, you don't want to be a footballer, you don't want to do this, that and that, you just want to play for your main Shinty team. Kincraig it's not such a Shinty community anymore, but we're with the kids, we're trying to bring that back. You know, it'll only be primary school level, but we're trying to get that kind of desire to play the game back in there with them. And the last number of years, 5-6 years, we are doing that successfully. You know, my boys playing for the primary team, once they get past that primary age, they will then have a decision to make, because we can't take them any further, because we're only a primary age Shinty team. They have a decision to make whether they go to Kingussie or Newtonmore, and that attraction will always be there.
Well, Kincraig's really a very scattered community, and the history of the place is such that going back to the days prior to the war and up to the war, there were plenty of families in the place, and there was a good Shinty team within the area. There were families within the area where there were 3 or 4 boys in each family. They all came up at the same age, they all grew up together, went to school together, played Shinty together. But here we are today, the Kincraig junior Shinty team is all that is left within the area, because the population is so small. People that are living in the area today are more involved with tourism, and it's the tourism side of things that young families are coming in, and we're depending on these young families coming in through the primary school at Alvey, working their way up. And of course, since we started the new Kincraig Junior Shinty Club, we're beginning to see, possibly in 5, maybe even 10 years' time, you'll see a Kincraig Shinty team playing in the upper divisions. The families that have a Shinty background, and there's probably about half a dozen to a dozen families, and their kids are at school, and of course they're passing it on to theirs, and there's no football. We don't play football. So Shinty is the sport, that's number one. So, unless you're a golfer, of course. So what we're looking at is the young ones coming up, and they will eventually feed into either Kingussie or Newtonmore. My preference would be Kingussie, as they're our next door neighbours. When you think about it, there's been nothing like this in the past, and we know of people in the community who are either lonely or been neglected, actually. And this to me is a great opportunity where the likes of ourselves know where they are, and we know people who know where they are. And if they can point them to us, I am quite sure at the end of the day there'll be a great benefit to the whole community, because these people have tremendous memories, and it's just a case of us triggering by using artefacts from days gone by. And of course it's not restricted to just the Shinty. Of course there's the golf and the curling that have been going on in this area as well.
I think Shinty is fundamental to this area, and in all that goes on, there's Shinty played in the entire community here, played from school to senior levels throughout the community. So it's fundamentally important to the welfare of the community, the welfare of those that play the game, the families that are associated with it, and everything that goes on, really. It's Shinty.
How did you teach yourself to become the goalkeeper you became?
Well, just by watching other folk, and well, to me the main reason I could stop a ball was because I hit it off the wall that often when we were young, you know. It's just one of these things you learn when you're young, you never lose it. I'm quite sure I could do it today if I had the legs to carry it, you know.
Well, I met my husband through Shinty. If it wasn't for Shinty, I probably wouldn't have met and married him. But that was 47 years ago. So it was very important. Hughie was in the first team then, and our life really revolved around Shinty. Shinty came first. The Saturday game was very, very important. And my children grew up, you know, going off to Shinty matches, and we enjoyed it very much. It was part of the year, sort of your plan for the year. And we were very lucky at that point when Newtonmore was very, very successful in the 70s and early 80s, that you could almost sort of put in the diary, yes, you would be going to this final or that final. And it was a great day out, great family day out.
Without Shinty, I don't know what I'd have done, to be quite honest with you. I mean, Shinty was everything to us at that time. Everything, and I mean everything. It was really all you could ask for was Shinty, and that's what you wanted to play. Like, you know. There was no injuries when we played. Because if you were injured, you were out the next game, and you know you wouldn't have a job getting back in. Now they're going down like flies. You know, you might laugh. It's true.
I think that's all it was. Just Shinty was Shinty, and that was it. Like my dad never played Shinty his life, but we just. The school gave us the Shinty, and we just carried on from there. Like, but the reason we carried on because we loved it, and I'm saying that for myself. I'm sure Hughie will say the same. I'm sure John will say the same. If you lost 2 weeks in the trot, you got to go back into it.
But what's your earliest recollection of playing Shinty? I mean, where did it all start for you? Was it a wee boy, middle-sized boy, older boy?
Primary school, obviously, on the top of the golf course. I'm sure you've heard it from everyone before. That was in Donald Finlayson's time that we practiced just at the back of the school, at the top of the 18th fairway end of the golf course. And that's my earliest memory, was getting my teeth knocked out by a guy called Kenneth McCrae, who was sort of a few years older than me, and going to Mrs. Finlayson and her sorting out, but I lost a couple of front teeth as well, you know.
Shinty was very much part of our family. My uncle Jock was, you know, he was running the primary Shinty then. He was in the top of the golf course all the time, encouraging the boys. And he was very much there, like every morning of the week, and encouraging us to play. And it was rain, hail or shine, we played Shinty. If we were seen with any other form of a football or anything like that, there was hell to play. So Shinty was very much part of the family, part of the village tradition, and a huge part of growing up. In the evenings we used to go down to the top of the golf course, and there would be literally dozens of players, and you know, you would see them turning up in their work vans, their work jeans, their work t-shirts, throwing on a set of football boots, Shinty boots, and getting torn in. You know, your Ken Smiths, Hughie Chisholm, Joe McKenzie, all these guys. And you know, you were very much told, get out of the way, boy, get behind the goals. And that's all we did. And there were so many of us behind the goals, we were having our own wee duel to see who would get the ball back for the first team guys. So, you know, it's just part of growing up in Newtonmore.
It evolved in the early 80s to some great things as well, and some fantastic games. And exactly that, the team started to waver a bit towards the end of the 80s, and then it went, collapsed. But the big thing for me is, and that's the one thing that I'm more proud of than anything, is the fact that I stayed with it all that years and stuck with it. God knows why, I haven't a clue why I did it. And to come to 2011 and manage the team that 25-year wait to get back the Calanach back here was just probably, for me, it was the most special occasion in the history, in my time in the village. And the crowd that were out in the street that night, and it just tells a story all on its own, you know.
I think the core, you know, the core of your first team now, they've all got Shinty connections, family connections, fathers, uncles, cousins, and I think it's still very much part of the heritage of the village. As time's gone on, we're seeing a few young guys that have came to the area later in life, and no, it doesn't mean as much to them, but the guys that are born and brought up in the village, it's 3-4-year-old, you get handed a club. So I think it's still as important to all these guys, and our team today, if you look around the team, the guys that are there, very much Shinty families.
So yeah, I would have been about, let me see. Been about 12 or something, 12 years old. And this stick came from Inverness, from a company called J.S. Mcpherson. And beautiful. I think I've got other ones, other sticks somewhere, but this one I think that's amazing, you know, beautiful. My name is Donnie Grant, and I have been in Kingussie for 60 years or something like that. There's a football team here that plays in the summertime and things like that, but there's nothing compared with the Shinty Club, you know. The Shinty's just one of the top sport, the top sport in this area, I would say. Well, I was born in 1938. So about 15-18 years after that, I was played Shinty in the senior team. And there was 2 or 3 of us that were playing, and that's got us back. But we weren't good enough to win the trophy, the main trophies. You know.
Well, I'm Joe Taylor. I'm currently chieftain of Kingussie Shinty Club. Well, we were the first team to win the Badenoch Cup, and Newtonmore have won it the most, and we won it 1896, we won it regularly till 1921, and then we didn't win it for 40 years, till 1961. Don't ask me why, but we didn't. And then we didn't win it again till 84, and then from then on for the next 20 odd years we dominated. Our first team went 95 games without defeat. Our second team, I was with the second team then, went 107 games without defeat. At the same time, there's no other club has done that. And ourselves in Newtonmore claim that Badenoch is the home of Shinty. And I think I'm right in saying that if you add up all the trophies that Kingussie and Newtonmore have won together, it's more than the other 38 clubs added up together. So we can't claim, in my view, we can claim that Badenoch is the home of Shinty.
And I was a football player as well. So I played for Nairn County and Nairn County, and for they were the only major football team I played for, you know. And when I came back from the football, I learned a lot from them, training and all this sort of thing, you know, and how to do it. And I took it back here with me, and got all these younger guys trained up and everything, you know, and all of a sudden we were back up at the top again, you know, and hitting that off at the top, and we continued that for 10 years maybe, you know. Fantastic. There's things coming in and newspapers and things like that. Kingussie would set up a record of number of times they had won the trophy and that, over that period, you know. Yeah. So that was great. Yes. The wartime broke everybody up, and it was difficult to get a team back. You know, we didn't have enough good players, you know, and all of a sudden it kind of dropped down, but not out of the top level but dropped down, you know. And then it was a case of gradually building it all, you know, it came through. So today, what we have is a young team, most of them in their 20s, you know, so that's young for Shinty mainly, and they are getting better and better and better, you know. They're at the top of the league just now, but and they're playing in the cup final, a cup final on Saturday. So yeah, that's the position they're in, you know, and they've got the youth there with them, which is better than most clubs, you know. So good.
You must have seen many changes.
I have indeed. Say for instance our games in those days, it was principally shinty, and the great event in the winter time was the Clooney ball play, as it was termed. It was usually held on Old New Year's Day, and that was the proper day in the Highlands, not the New Year Day that is held today. It was the 12th of January that was held in my younger days, not the 1st of January. Anyhow, on the 12th of January, the Clooney ball play was always held, and they came there from far and near, people walking from Kingussie with a shinty stick, and all had to take part in the game. The laird himself, Clooney, our chief, he would choose one side, and some other laird from a neighbouring parish would choose an opposing side. And everybody who had a common, or a shinty stick as they call it, had to take part in the game. And there was none of the modern ideas about it. We might not even have goal posts, but usually some people's jackets or overcoat or something of the kind laid down and measured up in a very long field. They would play for at least a couple of hours. The game was set in motion, and in those days it wasn't a ball such as they have today. It was a horsehair ball. And by Jove, if you got struck by it, you'd know it because it cut you to the very bone. And after the game, plenty of the Mountain Dew there, plenty coffee, biscuits and cheese, any amount. It was a real day.
Laggan is a community, I think, that is a microcosm of the wider Shinty world, the wider Highland history, because it's been affected by all the influences which have made the Highlands what they are today, and we see the effect of historical events over which the people of Laggan had no control, taking their effect over periods of time, particularly the First World War, then the Second World War. The changes in the way estates have been run are very significant in an area like Laggan, because that tends to decide how many people stay in the place, never mind effects like the war. But if there is employment there, very often the people of Laggan have had to move in any case, albeit 3 or 4 miles along the road to Newtonmore, Kingussie, but there's also been the pull in the other direction towards Lochaber, which has been very interesting in Shinty terms. And then if you move in slightly in the other direction, you've got Dalwhinnie, the distillery, and all these developments, and the road south, which is not unimportant. But in all those terms, the important part of Laggan's history is that they're central at the confluence of the river and the junction of the roads and all that. It leaves them right in the middle of everything that's going on, but they're being pulled in all these different directions, and that's reflected in the Shinty of history in the area. The idea of playing a match with one half of one kind of ball and then the other half with the other kind of ball was quite imaginative at the time, I suppose, because there was a sense that the hair ball was becoming redundant and difficult to play and affecting the style of play, because the people of Badenoch were aware that there were other developments happening elsewhere, and the context of all of this was that there was a huge debate at the time about how Shinty was being played in different areas. You had different numbers of players, you had different numbers of everything happening all over the place, and the key point was that the ball was different. So to set a game up shows you they had a very kind of scientific approach to the game, and the difficulty with the hairball was the construction and its durability. It just didn't last for the whole game. What they were finding with the leather ball, as they immediately found out in the game of two halves, if we can call it that, was that the leather ball was much better in terms of lasting for the whole game and enabled the players to play a different aerial type of game because the ball moved about and travelled faster. So it's historically a very important point in the development of shinty as a game that they moved from one type of the ball. Even before then it would have been the wooden ball, so then the hair ball just didn't last, wasn't much use, and now we have a sustainable type of ball coming into play at that point. It's very often forgotten that Laggan as a shinty team in their own right have a very strong tradition, and actually were quite a powerful team round about the turn of the 1900s into the 20th century. Now we find that in 1900 specifically, for example, they won 3 trophies, the Kennedy Cammon, the Campbell Cup and the McTavish Cup, and then their highlight, I suppose the high point of all their play was in 1904. When they reached the final, for the only time ever, they reached the final of the Camanachd Cup, the game's top prize. And unfortunately, they lost 4-1 to Kyles, so that was their high point, but they did lose the final. It was commemorated in all sorts of poems, partly the controversy about Donald Catnach playing in the first match, but then in the final itself, I'll just read one verse of it. To Laggan team great honours due, their practice games were very few. The team are scattered far and wide, o'er hills and dales they had to stride. So that kind of sums up a lot of their history, where they were providing players for all sorts of other teams at different points in their history because they weren't strong enough. But on this one occasion, they managed to get to the Camanachd Cup final. Unfortunately for them, they met a better team on the day. The First World War had a huge impact on Badenoch in general, but on the smaller villages, Laggan for example, it's clear that that decimated the whole area. I think if truth be told, Laggan has never really, just as many other villages and towns in the Highlands, have never really recovered from that generation they lost between 1914 and 1919. But it's really quite extraordinary to remark that now, 100 years after the end of the First World War, here we have Laggan players again appearing in Camanachd Cup finals, albeit that Ian Richardson, for example, is born and bred in Laggan and was in the successful Newtonmore team of the 2019 Camanachd Cup final, winning escapade. Owen Fraser, who also got a medal in that game, he's the son of a Laggan crofter and stalker. Ewan Fraser. Callum Grant, son of a farmer. Ewan Grant, a former Kingussie player, is now prominent in the Kingussie team. James Faulkner, he was also born and brought up in Laggan. His grandfather Donald has a neighbouring croft to Ewan Fraser. He's also prominent in the Kingussie team. Michael Slimmen just turned 16 at this point. He's playing in the Kingussie second team, and interestingly he's got a sister, Katie, who's a very talented athlete in her own right, and she's in Glasgow at a special school for athletes. Well, she comes back home and plays for the Badenoch ladies team. So here we are 100 years later, after Laggan's greatest hour, they're still doing what they did 100 years ago. Whether they'll ever get to the point of producing a team themselves, it's hard to see that happening. It would need a total transformation in terms of the community strength and the number of people living and working in that area. But who's to know? It might happen, it could happen, it would be great if it happened. But at the moment, they're happy to achieve their success through the success of their neighbours, if nothing else.
Well, I would say that it's quite important to gather what you're doing, gathering everything together. And I have not as yet got dementia, but I'm inclined to forget people's names sometimes. So anything you can do to bring people, you know, improve their standard of living, not standard of living, but standard of life, it's important.
I've got Alzheimer's, yeah. So, but sometimes it bothers me, you know, and I don't get on the move or anything like that, but I've been lucky with the Alzheimer's, and then with the people like John picks me up, you know, I don't drive anymore. He'll pick me up and we'll go away somewhere and speak to the others, you know, so it's good that. But we were always good friends, John and I, you know, from school days and everything. He's been great for me, you know, just now, helping me what I'm doing and everything like that. You know, so. But I can help him because I know what he's trying to do, you know, and with other people and all that. So he picks me up and we go up above Inverness or whatever, you know, and meet people there and go and see them, and we love it, you know. So yeah, it's good. It's been, you know, quite honestly, I've had a great life, you know. And the fact that I'm 80 years old now, I can't believe it, you know.
Well, the aim of Shinty Memories as a project is essentially to support those suffering and living with dementia and Alzheimer's. We do have quite a number in our community here, which is not commonly known, but we're aware of that, and what we're doing is to try and support them in the Memories project using our Shinty photography, our artefacts, and even the filming that we're actually about to produce or are producing at the present moment to use in the cafes and in support of those with dementia.